I still remember the first time I felt the gnawing sense that something was off with Rachel. At the time, I brushed it aside as paranoia. We had been together for 2 years, and the world outside our apartment felt ordinary enough. Streetlights flickering along rain-soaked sidewalks, the distant hum of traffic. But inside, everything started to feel fragile. I noticed the way her fingers lingered on her phone longer than necessary. The way she smiled at messages that I wasn't supposed to see. The small evasions that added up like a puzzle I didn't yet know how to solve. We met in the kind of way that feels like fate. A coffee shop on a Monday morning, lines of people moving with predictable rhythm. She bumped into me, or maybe it was me bumping into her, and spilled coffee across my jacket. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, widened in immediate apology. The way she laughed, soft yet deliberate, left something unsettled and magnetic in my chest. That day, I didn't know I was beginning a path that would lead me to the edge of myself. The early months were intoxicating. She was lively, engaging, and somehow always one step ahead in conversation, reading the subtle shifts in my expressions like a book. I had never met anyone who demanded so much from me, and yet made me want to give it all freely. There was a thrill in her unpredictability, the way she challenged me intellectually and emotionally. But as the months stretched on, I began noticing tiny inconsistencies. The small lies. I was at the library when I knew she wasn't. A sudden meeting canceled without explanation. Didn't set off alarms immediately, but they seeded doubt. By the time our first anniversary rolled around, the cracks had widened. I confronted her once, gently, asking about a text she received at 2 a.m. She laughed, brushed it off, and told me I was imagining things. The relief was immediate, but the doubt didn't vanish. It lingered, a shadow in the back of my mind that refused to be ignored. I told myself I was overreacting, that trust was the foundation of any real relationship. But trust doesn't make you blind to subtle truths. It makes you question the ones you see. And then came the night that started the unraveling. I was working late, or at least I thought I was. The city was quiet, slick with recent rain, and the soft glow of my office lights did nothing to mask the tension growing in my chest. My phone buzzed, a message from Rachel. "I need a little space tonight, don't wait up." It wasn't the message itself, but the timing, the suddenness, the careful way she phrased it. That night I didn't go home. I didn't sleep. I drove aimlessly, city lights reflecting in the puddles, my mind racing with scenarios that made no sense but felt dangerously plausible. 2 days later, I followed her. Not obsessively, at least not at first. I told myself it was precaution, like checking a neighbor's house when they're on vacation. But it quickly became something else. I saw her enter a small, dimly lit bar I hadn't known she visited. Moments later, a man I didn't recognize joined her. Their conversation was quiet but intimate, gestures exchanged with familiarity. I didn't see a kiss, but I saw enough. My stomach sank. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. The days that followed were unbearable. Every casual smile she gave me, every touch, every whispered "I love you" felt poisoned. I wanted to confront her, demand answers, but a part of me was paralyzed by fear. Fear of the truth, fear of losing her completely, fear of realizing the woman I thought I knew was a stranger. Sleep became fragmented. Meals were rushed or skipped. I existed in a haze of suspicion and longing, trying to piece together the fragments of a life that was no longer whole. I wish I had known then how deep the deception went. I wish I had walked away the moment I glimpsed her in that bar. But love, as I would later learn, has a cruel way of chaining you to hope, even when your gut screams to run. The first part of this story isn't about betrayal. It's about the slow awakening to a truth you're terrified to face, the creeping realization that the person you trusted with everything might have been holding secrets from the very beginning. The next few weeks were a nightmare disguised as normal life. Rachel continued her routine as though nothing had happened, but I noticed the little things, the way her phone buzzed in her hand, the quick flick of her eyes, the subtle hesitation in her voice when she answered simple questions. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that I was overreacting, but the gnawing in my chest wouldn't relent. Every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. I began documenting her movements, tracking patterns in her work schedule, noting times she left and returned. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was necessity. I needed to know, to have proof that would either confirm or absolve my fears. Obsession crept in slowly, almost unnoticed, until it dominated every waking moment. Friends noticed my distraction, my lack of appetite, the hollow tone I used when I spoke. I brushed off their concern, smiling politely, pretending everything was fine, all the while spiraling deeper into a private hell. And then came the night I saw Marcus again. He was taller than I expected, calm in a way that made my stomach knot, carrying himself with an unearned confidence. Rachel approached him with ease, the kind of ease I once reserved only for me. They laughed quietly, leaned close, and the intimacy of their gestures cut me deeper than any words could. I wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, but something held me back: fear, shock, disbelief, all colliding in a way that left me frozen on the sidewalk. After that, I couldn't focus on anything else. Work blurred into a haze, friends' voices became distant echoes, and every moment alone was filled with images of her and Marcus. I tried to talk to her casually, hinting at suspicion, but she was careful, meticulous in her denials. She smiled too brightly, laughed too easily, and avoided my gaze in a way that made my stomach twist. I wanted to shout, to tear everything apart, but I held back, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she would come clean. Weeks stretched into a month, each day heavier than the last. I followed her less openly now, afraid someone might notice, afraid that my own desperation would betray me. But every shadow, every muffled laugh from a passing stranger made my heart race. I discovered her phone on the counter one morning, carelessly left behind. The messages I found were casual yet intimate, filled with jokes and endearments that were never meant for me. My hands shook as I scrolled, every message a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. The tension in our apartment became unbearable. We were together, yet apart. Meals were quiet, conversations shallow. Her laughter no longer reached her eyes when I watched, it was a mask. And yet when she touched me, whispered my name in the night, I felt a pull too strong to resist. Love and hate, desire and rage, trust and suspicion, all tangled into a knot I couldn't untie. I knew she was hiding something catastrophic, and yet I couldn't let go. Then came the weekend I will never forget. She suggested a trip, a brief escape from the monotony, claiming she needed space to clear her head. I agreed, despite my growing doubts. The day of departure she suddenly canceled, citing an urgent work meeting. I followed her, heart racing, stomach twisting. That's when I saw Marcus waiting for her outside a small office she frequented. The kiss they shared, long, intimate, deliberate, was the confirmation of every fear, every suspicion I had battled for months. By the time I returned home, soaked from the rain, hands trembling, the world felt irreparably broken. I wanted answers, confrontation, closure, but a part of me feared what the truth might fully reveal. I was trapped, ensnared not by her actions alone, but by the lingering hope that she might still choose me, that love could somehow survive this. And in that desperate, feverish state, I realized the story had only begun. From that moment, life became a constant battle between reason and obsession. I couldn't let go, and yet every encounter, every casual touch, reminded me that I was entangled in a web I could neither control nor escape. My friends tried to reach me, inviting me out, calling me at odd hours. I declined politely, smiling on the phone while inside I was unraveling. The apartment became a cage, each room a reminder of her duplicity and my inability to confront it directly. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to follow her again. It was late, the streets slick with rain, the city asleep except for the occasional hum of distant traffic. I trailed her car from a safe distance, heart hammering, palms sweating. She parked in a quiet neighborhood I didn't recognize. I watched from the shadows as she got out, moving with practiced ease toward a small, dimly lit building. Minutes later, Marcus arrived. Their interaction was casual, familiar, intimate. I felt bile rise in my throat. Inside, the room was modest, almost banal, but the tension radiating from them was palpable. Rachel laughed, leaned close to Marcus, and touched his arm in that way she used to touch mine. I stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. It wasn't just the act of cheating. It was the ease, the comfort, the meticulous secrecy that cut me deeper than any kiss ever could. I wanted to storm in, confront them, scream, but fear rooted me in place. Something about this felt larger, darker, beyond just infidelity. Days passed in a blur. Every message, every call, every glance became a trigger. I questioned myself constantly. Was I imagining things? Was I overreacting? But the patterns were undeniable. The small lies, the evasions, the deliberate choices all pointed to a truth I couldn't ignore. Rachel was living a double life, and the more I watched, the more dangerous it seemed. Then the breaking point arrived. I stumbled upon evidence I wasn't prepared for. Photos of envelopes, ledgers, and even small amounts of cash exchanged in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. My heart pounded in my chest. I realized she wasn't just cheating emotionally. She was orchestrating something calculated, deliberate, and potentially dangerous. I sat in my car, rain dripping down the windshield, hands trembling. My mind raced. How could the woman I loved be capable of this? How could someone smile at me, touch me, and yet hide a life so separate from mine? That night she returned home, smiling, seemingly innocent. I tried to act normal, engaging in shallow conversation, laughing when she did, all while my mind replayed the images I had seen over and over. Each laugh, each touch was a knife twisting deeper. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, to break everything open, but I also feared the repercussions. The stakes had shifted. This was no longer just about love or betrayal. It was about safety, about navigating a reality I wasn't prepared for. As the days progressed, I realized I was living two lives simultaneously. One with her, pretending, hopping, longing; the other alone, following, observing, calculating. Sleep was scarce, meals were often skipped, and every shadow outside my window felt like a warning. Rachel's secrets had become my obsession. An obsession, I discovered, is a dangerous thing. It consumes everything, leaving you raw and exposed, desperate for a resolution you may never get. The story wasn't about one betrayal. It was about layers of deception, about discovering that the woman you trusted most could harbor a life so completely hidden. And as I sat in the darkness, watching the city lights reflect in the rain, I knew that what came next would either destroy me completely or redefine everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and survival. The tension in our apartment had become unbearable. Every casual smile she gave, every whispered word, was a reminder that I was living with a stranger. I couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep. My mind raced constantly, piecing together fragments of her double life, trying to anticipate her next move. Friends reached out, but I brushed them off, pretending everything was fine while I unraveled quietly inside. Then came the night that changed everything. I followed her to a quiet part of town, a neighborhood I had never visited before. She parked in front of a small, nondescript building. Minutes later, Marcus arrived, moving with a confidence that made my chest tighten. I hid in the shadows, watching as they entered together. This time I saw more than just intimacy. Envelopes were exchanged, small stacks of cash counted, and whispered words exchanged with urgency. My hands shook. What had started as cheating had escalated into something I couldn't comprehend. Returning home, I was numb. Rachel came in as though nothing had happened, her hair damp, a faint smile on her lips. I stared at her, trying to mask the horror I felt, pretending that I didn't know anything. She curled against me, whispered my name, and I wanted to believe her again, just for a moment, but the knowledge of what I had seen made it impossible. I felt trapped in a life that no longer belonged to me. The following days were a delicate, tense dance. I asked casual questions, tested her reactions, watched for slips. She deflected expertly, smiling, evading, maintaining her mask of innocence. The thrill of discovery was replaced by fear. I couldn't predict what they might do next, and the uncertainty was suffocating. Every glance, every word carried the weight of suspicion. I realized that trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. One evening, I decided to take a step I had been avoiding. I followed her to the motel again, hiding in the rain-soaked streets, my hands clenched around the steering wheel. She entered with Marcus, moving naturally, comfortably, as if the world outside didn't exist. The scene I witnessed made my stomach churn, Rachel handling cash, exchanging notes, checking her phone with intensity. The calm, confident woman I had loved was gone, replaced by someone calculating, fearless, and entirely hidden. That night she returned home again. I confronted her indirectly, pressing casually, asking questions with a smile that belied my growing panic. She responded smoothly, carefully, her eyes flicking away in the slightest hint of evasion. I realized the danger of confronting her directly. There was something larger at play than I could manage alone. My obsession deepened, driven by fear and the desperate need to understand the full scope of her secrets. By the end of that week, I understood the truth. I was living with a woman who could destroy everything I cared about without a second thought. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It had become practical, dangerous. I felt powerless, trapped, caught between my love for her and the terrifying reality of her hidden life. The stakes were higher than I had imagined, and the next move I made would define the rest of my life. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday night. I parked my car in the shadows outside the motel, engine off, watching. Rachel had left hours earlier and I knew her destination. My chest was tight, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I told myself this was the last time. I needed to confront her or walk away forever. I didn't expect what I saw. Marcus arrived first, calm, confident, carrying a heavy bag. Rachel followed, coat tight around her, glancing nervously at the street. They entered the building together. Through a crack in the blinds, I saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, counting stacks of cash, while Marcus organized envelopes and checked a laptop. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just cheating. This was a deliberate, orchestrated scheme, something I wasn't prepared for. And then it escalated. Marcus opened a drawer and pulled out a small handgun. Rachel handled it with ease, checking the clip, sliding it back into place as if it were nothing. The casual, fearless way she moved through that room, her intimate familiarity with Marcus, and her calm composure shattered every illusion I had left. The woman I loved, the one I had trusted, was gone. In her place was someone entirely unknown, dangerous, calculating, untouchable. I stumbled back to my car, breathing shallow, hands shaking. I couldn't call the police. I wasn't sure what I could say or if I'd even survive the consequences. Fear replaced heartbreak. Love had transformed into something unrecognizable. I realized then that staying meant danger, not just emotional but real physical danger. That night Rachel returned home, her smile in place, voice soft, touching me like nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling, haunted by the motel, the money, the gun. I wanted answers, confrontation, closure, but fear held me back. I couldn't risk my safety, and yet leaving her seemed impossible. I was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. By morning, I made a decision. I packed a bag quietly, taking only the essentials. No note, no explanation, no final words. I walked away from her, from the apartment, from the life I had known, leaving her with her secrets, her schemes, her dangerous world. Walking away wasn't just escape, it was survival. I realized then that some betrayals aren't meant to be confronted, some truths are meant to be survived. The days that followed were tentative. I rebuilt slowly, painfully, learning that trust once shattered doesn't mend easily. Sleep came harder, but it came. Peace, fragile and tentative, followed. And though I carried the scars of betrayal, I survived. I learned that walking away can be the strongest act of love for yourself. Rachel's shadow lingers in memory, but it no longer dictates my life. Betrayal left its mark, yes, but so did survival. In the end, I found a cold justice. By leaving, I retained everything she sought to control: my mind, my heart, my life. And in that, there was a strength, bitter but undeniable, that no deception could ever touch again.